Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with a cute little revenge story. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Don't be mean to old ladies. My friend and I were in Tesco food shopping. As we turned into an aisle, there was a man with his trolley stretched across the aisle, blocking it, and an elderly lady asking him politely to move. He ignored her, then snapped, "You can wait," at her. She simply turned around and went back down the aisle away from him. As we shopped, we saw this same interaction a couple more times. Now, we don't know the details of how it started, but this man was deliberately seeking the old lady out and blocking her way. As we turned into the biscuit aisle, about 2/3 of the way down was the man with his trolley behind him, engrossed in the biscuits. As we approached, I looked at my friend and gently pushed my trolley forward and in front of her. She immediately gripped the trolley handle, and I walked up to his trolley, gripped the handle, and we were off. We didn't rush, got to the end of the aisle, and turned into another aisle. We took his trolley, very full, to the far corner of the store and left it. When we reached the checkout, we told the cashier we'd seen an abandoned trolley in the far corner. Didn't want good food wasted or going off. I just wish I could have seen his face when he turned around with his packet of biscuits to find his trolley gone. I was expecting you and your friend to get two different ones and block him from both sides with a "you can wait." And our next story. My paycheck is where? Let me start by saying this was long before cell phones became de rigueur. Think home phones and pay phones. My parents insisted I be a responsible teen, meaning I should pay my own car insurance and earn my spending cash. Thanks, Mom and Dad. Honestly, thanks. I learned a good deal about responsibility from this simple exercise. So I got a job flipping burgers for a regional chain. The work was hellish with dirty long hours. This was my senior year, and I stuck with it as I moved on to college. They even deemed me worthy of a shift manager title, but I vehemently refused to become salaried because I feared they'd work me 60 hours a week. They'd call my house on days off and ask me to come in. They'd call before I was scheduled to work, asking me to come in early. I was already working almost 50 hours a week, and my class attendance, homework, and social life were suffering. I had no luck finding any unskilled work that wasn't worse. Think doing landscaping and 100+ temps all day. My parents issued an ultimatum, and I cracked. I decided I'd join the military to escape. The people I worked with lobbied me not to do it. They told me the military was a brutal environment and it'd crush my spirit. Like this place wasn't? I did the deal, signed the paperwork, and set a date to go off to basic training a few months down the road. The burger people are still calling me for extra and extended shifts, so I finally said, screw it, I've worked my last shift. The franchisee and district manager had a history of toying with people who quit. They'd play this shell game with their last check to send employees on a wild goose chase. The former employee would show up on payday to get their last check to be told it was at the franchisee's headquarters. Then they'd say it was at the main restaurant closest to headquarters. That restaurant would then say the check was sent there mistakenly and forwarded on to their original restaurant where they'd worked. This sometimes went on for a couple days. I came to realize that their last check was sitting in the safe right where it was supposed to be all along. Friday afternoon comes and I drive over to get my last paycheck. Guess what the manager tells me? Yup, my check's not there. I need to go to the franchisee's corporate headquarters. Anticipating their chicanery, I'd written the number to the state's labor board on a piece of paper and stuffed it in my pocket before heading to get my check. I pulled the piece of paper out, set it on the counter, explain what it is, and notify them that I'm stepping outside to call the labor board to request a complaint packet be sent to my house, but I expect my check when I come back in. I step outside, call my dad, and laugh because these transparent clowns did exactly what they always do. I walk back to the counter, and the general manager appears from around the corner holding my check. She slides the check across the counter while looking away like it was a dead lizard she'd been forced to handle. I tried to make eye contact while tamping down a grin. No dice. She won't look at me. It's beautiful at calling their bluff. And our next story. I did all that for nothing. So this officially happened back in September last year. My cousin and I are really close, and she introduced me to her friend, I'll refer to her as Dora, who was an all-right member of society. Kind of a stuck-up faux pas, but I'm a nice guy and kept to myself. My cousin, on her behalf, asked me if I could help Dora move from the great state of Minnesota all the way down to Kansas. Me, being the overly helpful guy I am, obliged and offered to help out any way I can. Later in the month, I was scheduled off for the weekend and went to help Dora move her belongings from her apartment and friend's house to a storage unit downtown. We went to rent the truck, which she did pay for, as well as for the storage unit. But that was pretty much it. I covered gas and any snacks for the rest of our endeavor. I didn't think too much of it when she didn't bother to thank me, but I kept it in the back of my mind. Come a month later, I'd had enough of my job and quit literally 2 days before the trip was supposed to take place, so I was kind of in a rock and a hard place. So I wasn't doing the best. The day before we left, she rented another truck for about 3 days, which was pretty cheap considering mileage and whatnot. We collected her things from the storage unit, went to her grandmother's house, bless her soul, and she let us spend the night. Bright and early, 6 a.m., we were up and ready to endure the 10-plus hour trip down to Tornado Alley. This is where the story truly begins. And it wasn't even 10 miles out when she complains about me talking to her. Dora, can you just shut up and stop talking? I'm not even fully awake yet. Me. Yeah, sorry. It was a fairly quiet ride, and the radio was going in and out, so I decided to cue up some anime when we stopped to get out and stretch. She noticed this and comes out with, "Oh, I love anime. Gimme!" Again, me being the overly helpful guy I am, obliged and handed over my phone. I couldn't watch it anyway while I drive. To top it off, every time the video had to buffer, she'd sigh and groan and complain that my service was crappy and she couldn't watch anything without waiting an eternity for it. I shrug off her comments and focus on the road ahead. Thus far, I've paid for almost all the snacks and gas for the truck, at this point over $100, and was a bit irritable at that. The further south we got, the more she complained. We finally reached Kansas, and all she's done is nag and whine that my service was bad. I should hurry up and get there, and don't go over the mileage. I don't want to be charged for all those extra miles, which was a nickel per mile over. No big deal to me. As we finally get to the drop-off point where I'll end up parking the truck to be unloaded a few days later, she sighs in relief. Finally, here we are. Took us long enough. I nod through my agitation and look down at my phone to see it was out of data, almost an additional 2 gigabytes over my plan. Since the bill just recycled a couple days prior, I was left without any for myself when I was out and about. After we get out, she chose to ignore me entirely. Not even a thank you for this entire trip, even when I tried to strike up conversation. My cousin didn't acknowledge my frustration and must have chalked it up to, he's probably tired. I spent the night and had a flight out the next day, but had to fork out some extra money for a new flight since I was tired and mistakenly booked my flight from Kansas City, Missouri instead. At that point, I was getting low on funds and couldn't afford a lot, so I just kept my money for food, to which I needed. A few hours before my flight, we headed out for food and sat down at a fairly nice sushi joint. I mean, as nice as you can get in the States. I asked Dora if she could pay me back for the gas I spent on the truck on the way down. Not even the snacks or my F-up on my flight, and gas alone was a small sum of around $100. She didn't even acknowledge my existence at this point, and by this time, I was tired and fuming. I was taken for a hell of a ride and didn't even get as much as a thank you for the time and money I spent on this demon. Later that day, my cousin and Dora went to drop me off at the airport, to which I said nothing to either of them, figuring my cousin was just oblivious to my anger. My cousin and I hug it out before I take my flight back home to the Great White North. When I get home, I tell my cousin that I had a terrible ride down and that I wouldn't be back to visit for some time. The revenge. Fast forward till about 1 week ago. I get a text from my cousin asking about the journey. I call her and tell her the whole ordeal. She used my data up so I couldn't have any for myself. She didn't even send a dime to me for everything I spent on her for the trip. There wasn't even a damn thank you from day one when I met her. This is where it got juicy. Apparently Dora was stealing money from my cousin, lying to her roommates at my cousin's house, threatening them, talking smack, etc. My cousin also asked if the apartment Dora was staying at was damaged, to which I said it was almost in peak condition for renting, to which Dora had lied about. I even heard about how Dora claimed I was spewing racist, sexist, and hate speech the entire trip and that she didn't feel safe around a brute like me. I scoff and chuckle over it. My cousin then also stated that Dora actually left home without any of her things and was en route to her mom's place back in the bayous of Louisiana without even mentioning she was leaving. My cousin and I ramble on about what they plan to do with their things, and as far as I know, they're sitting on the lawn being exposed to the elements because she's now been kicked out and is being sought after to have theft charges pressed against her. So after about 6 months of absolute anger and bitterness over the whole ordeal, I finally get some peace knowing that Dora will almost certainly have hell to pay for the way she treated the people who gave a damn about her. Update. I found out a few weeks ago she's back in my home state living with her mom. She does indeed have a warrant out for her arrest. Unfortunately, I don't know if anyone in her family would be willing to rat her out to the police. I think her grandmother would be willing to help out. And I think I still have that address stored somewhere, if you know what I mean. It still baffles me that people can be so rude and unappreciative to nice people like you. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.